1820s to the 1840s, Americans can't get enough of these paintings. Now, interestingly enough, for the artists are really making no money off of these. These artists aren't going away wealthy. They don't have patrons necessarily that are commissioning these artworks, with a few notable exceptions. What they're producing, in their minds, was a way of capturing a culture that was on the brink of disappearance. Okay? And not only did they think that this culture was going to vanish, they thought the vanishing of that culture was going to happen immediately, right? That if we don't get these pictures captured right now, if we don't capture these scenes, if we don't capture these people, like, they're going to be gone by the end of the decade, or by the end of the half century. Of all of the legislative issues in Jackson's presidency, when he comes to office in 1829, the issue of the removal of Native Americans is Jackson's first legislative priority. And he attacks it with an urgency that has never been felt before by any of his predecessors. It's an urgency that he brings to the situation that even the voters have not necessarily saddled him with. Does that make sense? So as he is campaigning, several of the issues that come up time and again, it's the issue of the bank, right? The people talk constantly what we want to see Jackson do with the Bank of the United States, how we want him to solve the financial affairs of the country. You hear a lot less from the people of the United States about what they hope Jackson does with Native Americans. So the fact that Jackson steps in the first year of his presidency and immediately begins campaigning for the Indian Removal Act, it says a lot about Jackson. But Jackson read his election in 1828 as a mandate of the people, and therefore what he thinks is best for the people is what is best for the people. Of all the issues that Andrew Jackson embraces and does battle with over the course of his 8-year presidency, Indian removal is still very much the single issue that people in the United States wake up today still struggling under.
What strikes me the most about this painting is her basic lack of expression, that she does not look like she's unhappy that she's about to lose everything she has ever known. She's losing her language, her culture, with the lighting specifically being on the woman's body, just this glowing white dress, lighting up this woman's body, her breasts, her womb. Erin was talking about it earlier. She said that it's a very European construct, like this body that's being painted. It may have looked completely different, but this is to appeal to white people, to draw them to the West. The man presenting her to this trapper is, stern. It plays into the noble savage, like, I'm giving you this prize for what you've paid. And I don't know if you've read what she was bought for, but it's $600 paid for the legal tender of this region, guns, $100 each, blankets, $40 each, red flannel, $20 a yard, alcohol, $64 a gallon, tobacco, beads, etc., all at corresponding rates. And it goes on to say that he's a ruined man for spending this money buying his wife. It says that he's ruined after such an investment, and that the woman is lucky to be in this relationship with him. I say relationship, she's probably just meeting him. But that's the caption is one of the things about this painting that angers me the most. It really describes how she is viewed by the painter.
White settlers were the victors, right? Manifest destiny was the plan, and by golly, we did it, right? We go from sea to shining sea. And so victors write the story. Why would we include that part of the story, right? I mean, I think that's fair. When you look at children's textbooks over the years, right? I mean, how many generations have been raised in the United States with little to no discussion in their own education, right? I mean, Andrew Jackson goes from being the great hero of the Battle of New Orleans to being the president who pays off the national debt, and by golly, we like that guy, There's a whole middle section in there that's missing. There's a whole story that's missing. All of a sudden, we're asking people to believe this story that they've never heard before, and it casts the United States in the worst possible light. I mean, that's the resistance we find often from visitors. I say often. I don't when we have resistance to the story we're talking about Native history, like that's the resistance we get. If I grew up, I think about my parents' generation, they're in their late 60s, right? If my parents grew up going to school in the 50s and 60s and never heard this story before, and all of a sudden this story is now getting told, well, where in the world did this come from? You know? And so I've heard people accusing historians and others of just making it up. I mean, you can see that they are grappling not only with the ramifications of the story, but the fact the story exists at all. The fact that this happened at all, right? And so that is very much part of the problem. So now what we're asking people to believe, we're asking people to get acquainted with an entire chapter of history that's been absent from their textbooks and from their historical education. And now we're not only asking them to believe that it has happened, but to actually have feelings about what has happened, right?
I'm 75 years old, and when I was a little girl, all of the cowboy movies, the enemies were the Indians. And all the children in our neighborhood would go out in the yard and play cowboys and Indians, and they thought the cowboys were the heroes and the Indian. And I played the Indian. Yeah, I didn't know why, but I did. And as time, and there are still serious problems. I mean, the government is trying to run that pipeline through the Indian reservation, and I don't think we really have the right to overrule what the Indians want in their reservation. But there is a large part of the population that is supportive of the Indians and trying to oppose what the government is doing. And the other thing is that back when I was a little girl, nobody would ever want to know or admit that they had Indian in their background. But now people are looking for that and hoping for that. So I know that our Native Americans don't really have the life they deserve, but I do think that the white opinion is becoming more aware.
Just admitting that these things happened is a huge step for a lot of people. You know, the people who say, you know, America has never done wrong. We've never done wrong by any of our people. But we are also the people. To give a little background on my nation, it was kind of dissolved at one point and brought back in the 70s as a sovereign nation. And it is a financial mess. I'm going to be really honest. We have a huge problem with our deficit. We struggle to fund programs for our elders and our children. I am an at-large citizen. I have never been, you know, a citizen living within the boundary of, you know, our Indian territory. And just watching this from the outside looking in, seeing a nation struggle, almost looking like it's going to implode on itself, has been pretty devastating. We have our people, we have what's left of our religion and our culture. The fact that it's so unavailable to the people and, you know, to me personally, is pretty painful.
What is the next step then? Since we know the last step isn't like admitting that it occurred, that doesn't work to fix it or repair anything. And like we do know, like not just the one nation, but like basically all Native nations are suffering from the removal still. And so like, how do we help to rebuild those collapsing economies and things like that?
We are all sovereign nations. There are 500 plus sovereign nations that are federally recognized. And while some receive federal funding and some do not, a lot of it lies within the leadership of the nation itself. That is a huge problem we have. We have problems with corruption. Like you'll read probably soon that you know, the Osage camp was sold. Like the land has been sold. They gave up the rights to the Black Hills just very recently. Like I think it happened earlier this week. But they actually accepted money offered by Congress like forever ago. I can't give you a year, but they took this money, you know, instead of, you know, standing up for their land, like what's really important. This is corruption.
Yeah. So what helpful policies could the U.S. put into place then? Obviously buying it is just extended removal. But are there subsidies, or like I understand how white men's like would also not usually be trusted.
No, I didn't think as much. One problem I'm seeing in my own nation is extradition of prisoners from our courts. We have a court system. We have a sovereign nation. We have a court system set up. We have laws. We have tribal police. We have all this set up, and the federal government will still come in and pick people out and try them for crimes that were committed on Indian territory. I think offering a larger scope of sovereignty and essentially leaving us alone would do a lot.
I'm reminded of accounts that I've read among the Cherokee people, also among the Creek and others, that so much of what natives are trying to do in the earliest years of our country, so like George Washington on, he makes this big speech about assimilation, and that natives don't have to be removed. We can all live side by side. We can respect the sovereignty of native peoples. They just need to assimilate. And the more they can leave behind of native customs and the more they can adapt to white customs, right, the easier this is going to be for everybody to get along. And it's not till Jefferson comes along where he's like, we've tried assimilation, it's not going to do. That looks like assimilation to me,
Yes.
right?
I can't speak for all nations, but most nations did not have a sense of money and possessions and what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. So this, part of this is assimilation. This is, they see white man giving money for things, so they place value in giving over their, I would assume, his daughter. I can't speak for the Creeks, but for most nations, like the Iroquois, it was just, you basically came together and said, hey, let's be husband and wife. We didn't really have husband and wife per se, but
Well, you can find many examples throughout antiquity, right? Women is a bartering system. Women is a piece of currency, so to speak, right? It's how kingdoms merge with other kingdoms. You sell your daughters off in marriage. So that's a practice that's very old. But I'm reminded of before I came to the Hermitage, I spent several years working in Virginia, and in early Virginian history, currency, the value of currency was determined by the value of tobacco. And it was based on the value of one hogshead of tobacco. And so that's what your currency is worth, right? There's an equivalent between tobacco and currency. And I'm having this horrible thought now about the equivalency of women in currency, right? One woman is worth $600 worth of skins and alcohol and clothing and guns and so it's almost like Native women are becoming like the unit of currency, which is a horrifying idea.
I think relating back to what you said about having to sell land to get financial support now, it's kind of similar to back then. Back then it was a little bit lesser. They had to sell a woman to get all this financial support, and now we're so removed, and the Native people are so removed to sell land. It's beyond that at this point. They're giving up where they live to keep these people, and so I think there's kind of that relation there too, that it's just expounded so much, so now we're giving up the homes of people too.
I appreciate that comparison, definitely.